All right, guys. So today, well, in the last couple of videos, we've gone over some basic keyframing animation. So the next thing to build upon that is we're going to start talking about skeletal animation. So before we can actually animate the skeleton, we've got to talk about how to actually make a skeleton. So on the top left corner of the screen, you're going to switch this drop down. It should default into modeling. Switch that into rigging. If you don't see that option there, what you can do is go to the top right corner where it says workspace, and then you can drag down to reset current workspace. That should get those options there for you. If it doesn't, just ask and we will figure it out. All right, so once we're in the rigging, you'll notice our drop downs up here have changed. These give us our rigging controls. So the one we're going to worry about first is skeleton. So for the exercise today, what we're going to do is just make a simple leg. If you think about your leg, it starts at your hip, it goes down to a knee joint, then down to an ankle joint, and then if you want to get really specific, down to different individual toe joints, but we're just going to worry about the big ones, the hip, the knee, and the ankle for now. So what we'll do is skeleton, create joints. All right, I find this is easier to work in either the front or side perspective. If we work in the 3D perspective, you're going to have a hard time lining things up and it's just going to make your life miserable. So go to the front, hit spacebar, that will bring that up for us. So again, we're going to go skeleton, create joints. So then what we're going to do is we will click once, that will add our hip joint. We're going to come down a bit, go out a little bit to the right, click. Now we have a knee joint. Then we're going to come back to the left and down a bit, not quite as far as the hip to knee. You can always adjust these later. There we have an ankle, and we'll finish it off to make a foot, add a little toe joint. All right, so now we have a very basic, the proportions are probably off, but we have a basic leg. So the first thing to notice is if we grab one of these joints and move it, so right there, the whole leg moves. Up here, everything below it is selected. If we go here, our ankle and foot would be selected. So that's how we can make adjustments after we're done. So the reason that when we select one of these, everything after it is selected is because of the type of joint that is being created. So these are called FK handles. They are forward moving. So the order we created was the hip, and then if we move forward to the knee, to the ankle, to the toe. So this is basically the original joint, the parent joint. All of these are children of it. If we think about a skeleton though, normally when you walk, you don't move your hip to move your feet. If anything, your feet move and then that determines going upwards up your leg. It kind of works in a reverse motion. So to actually apply that, we need to change the type of joint that we're using. So what we just did, that's good for setting up the base joints. Then we're going to go back to skeleton, and we are going to go down to here, create IK handle. So an IK handle is an inverse handle. Basically, like I said, it will work backwards. So what we'll do is we'll select the hip, and then we can select the ankle. That should create a new line. If we open up our outliner, which is Windows Outliner, you'll see, so we have over here, we have joint 1 is the top of the hip, and as a child to that is joint 2, which is the knee. A child of the knee is the ankle, and a child of the ankle is the foot. So those are our joints. Then if we click this IK handle 1, it will select just that line from the hip down to the ankle. So now the nice thing, when we move this, it will follow a more natural movement. So we move our ankle and our knee is going to push forward to accommodate that because our bones can't stretch and squash as we're walking. They're pretty much consistent. So if we move this backwards, our leg's going to start swinging. If we pull it up, it'll act normal. After that, we could also add, say we want to add another handle, skeleton, create IK handle, and we might want to go from the ankle to the foot, see what that does. Since there's no joints after it, and there's just the connection there, it doesn't have an effect on anything else. But if you think about it, if you're moving your toes up and down, you're not necessarily moving your knee, moving your hip. So that might be something we want to incorporate. When you're selecting these, you want to make sure that you are selecting the right spot. So like right there, I selected just the ankle joint, and you can see that our lower leg is just stretching out. It's not behaving properly. So you want to make sure that you have the actual joint selected. It might be hard to select on screen. If you zoom in, you can see these brown lines. If you click on one of those, that actually selects the joint, or you can select them in the outliner. There. So again, I'll zoom back out. And we might even want to go, say we go to the perspective view. All right. So if we were to look, that would probably be a standing position. And then say we were taking a step, we would play around with the different spots. We could start keyframing and so on. But like I said, the IK handles, those are the type of handles you're going to want to use for most skeletal animation. There are certain times where the forward handle will be the appropriate thing to use, but in most joints, the IK handle. All right, so that's a basic of how to make a leg. The next thing we might want to do is actually put a skin on it. Right now, it's just a unseen joint. If we were to render this, I don't think we would actually see anything because there's no materials, there's no skin, none of that. So what we can do is we can start adding some shapes. Say we're working on the thigh. A cylinder is probably a pretty good representation of what a thigh looks like. So again, it's probably a lot easier to work in one of the different perspectives rather than the 3D view. So we can get that lined up. Remember, we can still rotate things. And whenever we're happy with how that's positioned, so let's say that's how we want it. The last thing before we actually attach this is if we think about a leg, the top of our leg near our hip is probably bigger than when it gets down to the knee, even if slightly. So we can go to vertexes, and we can zoom in, and we should be able to select all of them. There we go. Sometimes it takes a little bit of trials. All right, and then if you remember from earlier in the semester, we can then scale them in and add a slight taper. All right, so with that done, we can select our joint. We can select our joint, and we can select the cylinder. Let's try and just select the cylinder first. There we go. All right, so with both of those selected, we should probably select the top one. There we go. Now we have everything selected. So we have the skin or the thigh, and we have the skeletal joints. We're going to go up to skin, and we're going to click this first option, bind skin. All right, so now say we select the ankle and we start moving it around. The skin we just added should move. There it goes. It moves with our joints. Then we can repeat the same process for the calf. We can add some spheres for the different joints, for the kneecap, things like that. If at some point you screw something up and you need to remove the skin, what you do is go to skin and unbind, and then that resets it to the default. And if we click here and move it around, you'll see that the skin's no longer attached. So that's, you'd click, and again, skin, unbind. So that's, I want to keep that short for today. That's the first thing we'll be doing. Once you guys have got a grasp on this, we'll go to building a larger skeleton and actually adding a model to it and adding some animation. So for now, work on getting a handle of the joints, get used to building a skeletal structure and adding some skin to it.